Guten Erev Shabbos, my holy sisters and brothers. Great to be learning with you on a Friday, Yom Shishi. Let's light up the darkness. I'm so paranoid after yesterday. We had those gremlins was a nice word for it. Just weird glitches. Hopefully the video will be operating properly today. It's always annoying when you don't know the cause of the glitch, but we accept and we soldier on. Not getting any indication that it's not working. You'll let us know in the comments if you're having any unusual glitches. Who's in the house? Paula in Chicago, Gordo in Scotland, Yehudit in South Carolina, Karen in Northern California, Tom in Pennsylvania, Lucy in Minnesota, Peggy in Colorado. Welcome, Joseph in Massachusetts, Marjorie wishing us shalom from Virginia. You're working your way up the coast, right, Marjorie? Okay, wonderful daf today, wonderful, very colorful. We'll be learning a bit about the spies, right? When the children of Israel came out of Egypt and we were wandering in the wilderness, it would have been a much shorter trip, but for the tragic incident of the spies who went ahead to check out the promised land and brought back a report that indeed the land is spectacular, beautiful, fertile, an amazing gift that God has promised to us. But for some reason, they added in their own opinion that it was inhabited by giants who would crush us, defeat us, and all the people freaked out and panicked. And God said, you know what? This generation has come out of Egypt, but maintains a slave mentality. You're not ready to enter the promised land. It'll be your children who go in. In that episode, we encounter the eshkol, the cluster of grapes, and we'll be talking about that today. All right. Our daf today is Lamed Dalet, page 34 here in Tractate Sotah, the 18th volume of the Talmud. We are in chapter 7, continuing our discussion of Mishna number 1. A rather long Mishnah, a lengthy Mishnah, here in Tractate, in chapter 7. And we started by saying that the warning that the husband gives the Sotah, the warning that the priest gives her in the temple, the oath that she must swear pertinent to the Sotah ritual may be recited in any language because she has to understand what's going on in case she doesn't understand Hebrew. And then, hinging off of that, we looked at some laws related on what may and what may not be recited in Lashon Kodesh, in the holy tongue of Hebrew. And interestingly, it's better to pray in Hebrew if you can. It's better to learn Hebrew and know what you're saying, or even if you don't know what you're saying, it's better to pray in Hebrew according to some opinions. But it is permitted to say the Shema, to say the Amidah, to say the Birkat Hamazon, the grace after meals, in the language that you understand best, because God says, "Hear, O Israel," right? Hear and understand. Whereas the declaration of the Bikurim, the blessings and the curses that were spoken to the children of Israel as they were about to enter the promised land, a unique moment in history that had to be done in Hebrew. And the sages have been deriving why one thing is okay to do it not in Hebrew and other things had to be done in Hebrew. All right, we picked this up at the bottom of page 33b. Now that we're talking about the children of Israel coming out of Egypt and after the 40 years in the wilderness, now finally entering the promised land, crossing the Jordan River. That's where those blessings and curses were stated. Basically, if you will follow the Torah as a people in your land, you will be blessed in all these ways. If you abandon the Torah and don't follow its laws as a people, you will be cursed in all of the following ways. And the people had to answer Amen, as it was made clear to them how things would go. Now that we're talking about crossing the Jordan, the sages taught in the Tosefta 8:1, how did the Jewish people cross the Jordan River? Every day the ark would travel behind the two flags of Judah and Reuben, right? So there were the 12 tribes, and often we've talked about the encampment, right? Whenever we would camp in a place, I think the longest time we spent in one place during the 40 years of wandering was 19 years in one place. Other times, much, much shorter time, and we would move by the word of God. When God said move on, we would move on. Right? The manna not going to be here anymore. It's going to be at the next campground. And when we would travel, there would be an order of travel, an order of the tribes and who's going first, right? And then the Levites carrying the Ark of the Covenant and all the materials of the tabernacle would be in the middle of that traveling array. Right, they're saying in terms of the traveling, how did the Jewish people cross the Jordan? Well, every day the Ark would travel behind the two flags of Judah and Reuben, right? In the midst of the sort of parade of the Jewish people. But on that day, when the Jewish people entered the promised land, entered the land of Israel, on that day, the ark traveled in front, right? The Ark of the Covenant containing the tablets of the Ten Commandments went in front. As it is stated, Joshua 3:11, behold, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all, the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord of all the earth is passing before you, right? Before, the ark will enter first. On every other day, the Levites would carry the ark, but on this day, the priests carried it, right? The actual sons of Aaron, and I guess at that point, grandchildren. As it is stated, and when the soles of the feet of the priests that bear the ark of the Lord of all the earth shall rest. Joshua 3:13. Now it is taught in a Baraisa that Rabbi Yosei says in 3 different places the priests carried the ark as opposed to the Levites. They carried it when the Jewish people crossed the Jordan, as we just heard, when they surrounded Jericho, right? Surrounded Jericho, that first big city that we encountered as we entered the land. And when they returned it to its proper place in the Holy of Holies during the reign of King Solomon, right? When the temple was finally built, and the Ark of the Covenant was transferred from the tabernacle that continued to be used for several hundred years after we entered the land until it finally came to its resting place in the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple. And so when they had that big inauguration, priests carried the ark, not mere Levites. It is taught in okay, so now we're on 34a at the top. And once the feet of the priests were immersed in the water of the Jordan River, the water flowed backward, as it is stated, and when those carrying the ark came to the Jordan, and the feet of the priests that bore the ark were dipped in the brink of the water, for the Jordan overflows all its banks all the time of the harvest, and the waters that came down from above stood and rose up in one heap. Right, so similar to the parting of the Red Sea, or the Reed Sea is probably a better translation, when we came out of Egypt, when we finally entered the Promised Land, again, we had a body of water divide and stand up like a wall of water, and the children of Israel crossed on dry land. Another miracle to sort of parallel the original miracle of entering the wilderness now that we are leaving the wilderness. And what was the height of the water? 12 mil by 12 mil, parallel to the size of the camp of the Jewish people. In other words, 12 mil is approximately 12 miles. 12 miles. Can you imagine? A wall of water 12 miles high. Who were passing through the Jordan. And this is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda. Now, they're going to argue about the nature of this heap of water at that event. But before we move on, let's just reflect for a moment that when did the water part? When the feet of the priests entered it, right? So they're being told, hey, we're going to go across this river. and God is going to take care of us, and we're going to get to the other side and enter this land. So you might have thought that they'd be like, okay, well, when God parts the water, we'll cross through. But no, the water did not part until they entered. So often in life, we have to take that first step before we're fully ready, before we understand what we're committing to, before the conditions are perfect, right? Sometimes you've got that dream job, that dream school, that dream relationship, that dream project. And if you just keep waiting for the conditions to be perfect, so then you never get started. But if you take that first step, then God will guide you along. And it was the same when we're crossing the Reed Sea, coming out of Egypt. The water did not part. We have a tradition until Nachshon from the tribe of Judah went in first and went in up to his nose before the water finally parted. So you got to be ready to take that first step sometimes. Now, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, said to Rabbi Yehuda, according to your statement, does a person move faster or does water move faster? You must say that water moves faster than a person. So if that is so, then before the camp of Israel crossed the river, the water would have come down and drowned them. As after the water rose up to a height of 12 mil, then it began flowing normally again. So rather, this teaches, and this whole analysis is so perplexing. I mean, okay, what do you mean the normal course of things? The water flowed up 12 miles high. That's totally miraculous. Why? We say, well, once you reach that height, it just starts flowing again. I mean, God caused it to go up, so God will, hold it until it comes down. But they don't say that. So they say, no, we think you've got your interpretation wrong. So rather, Rabbi Elazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, offers this. Rather, this teaches that the water gathered and rose in heaps upon heaps to a height of more than 300 miles. You just didn't make your miracle big enough, says Rabbi Elazar. 300 miles high. Why did it need to be so high? Until all the kings of the east and west saw it, as it is stated, and it came to pass when all the kings of the Amorites that were beyond the Jordan westward, and all the kings of the Canaanites that were by the sea, heard that the Lord had dried up the waters of the Jordan from before the children of Israel, until they were passed over, that their hearts melted. Neither was there spirit in them anymore because of the children of Israel. Right? So this was a kind of a calling card, right? God gave the Jewish people a calling card as they entered the promised land and let everyone know of the inhabitants. These people that you heard about 40 years ago came out of Egypt by a series of miracles, and then they went out of the news. They're back. They're back, and they're entering with a major miracle visible to all throughout the land. And even Rahav, the prostitute in Jericho, right, in the incident in Jericho, said to Joshua's messengers, for we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you, Joshua 2:10. And it is written, and as soon as we heard it, our hearts melted. Neither did there remain any more spirit in any man because of you. Evidently, the Canaanites were still terrified due to the splitting of the Red Sea, although that had taken place years earlier and in a distant location. And it is understood from here how terrified they became when a similar miracle occurred close to where they lived. Now, while the Jewish people were still in the Jordan, Joshua said to them, know for what purpose you are crossing the Jordan. It is in order to drive out the inhabitants of the land from before you, as it is stated, and you shall drive out all the inhabitants of the land from before you. And if you will do so, then all is well. But if not, water will come and drown otikem. And the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the word otikem? And the Gemara explains it as a combination of the words me, oti, and you, etchem. Right? So the waters will come and drown you and me. What is Joshua saying? I mean, what does that mean? Our purpose in crossing the river is to drive out the inhabitants. I mean, that's why we're coming, just to drive them out? Wouldn't you say that driving them out is maybe necessary for us to establish a home there? What do you mean we're coming in order to drive them out? But as we've learned in many other places, the people that were inhabiting Canaan at that time were just steeped in all kinds of wicked practices, including child sacrifice. And that had to be driven out of the land. The land, the Holy Land, will spit out any kind of unholiness and wickedness. And in this sense, the Jewish people were an instrument of God for fulfilling that goal. This goes hand in hand with the idea, we've had it's 4 times in the Torah, and recently in last week's Parsha, you shall be holy, for I am holy, says the Lord of hosts. Right? You shall be holy. So if you fulfill the Jewish mission of being a holy people in this world, being an example of holiness, right? And if you, the stiff-necked, stubborn people, if even you can act in a holy manner, then that's why you're a good example, a teaching example to the rest of the world. If even this stiff-necked, stubborn people can raise themselves up and behave in a holy manner, then anyone can. While they were still in the Jordan, Joshua said to them, pick up every man of you a stone upon his shoulder, right, as they're crossing the riverbed, according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel. That's at Joshua 4:5. And it is written that this may be a sign among you, that when your children ask in time to come, saying, what do you mean by these stones? This will be a sign for the children that their ancestors crossed the Jordan. While they were still in the Jordan, Joshua said to them, take out of the midst of the Jordan, out of the place where the priest's feet stood, 12 stones made ready, and carry them over with you, and lay them down in the lodging place where you shall lodge this night, your first night in the promised land. Now one might have thought that they were required to place these stones at each and every lodging place where they stayed. Therefore, the verse states, where you shall lodge this night, meaning only that first night when they entered. And Rabbi Yehuda says, Abba Chalafta and Rabbi Eliezer ben Mattia and Hananiah ben Hakinai stood on those same stones that the Jewish people took from the Jordan, and they measured them and found that each and every one weighed about 40 sah. Right, 40 sah is the measurement of a mikvah, a minimum size mikvah. And it is learned as a tradition that a load that one can lift onto his shoulders is 1/3 of the weight of the load that he can carry when others load it onto him. Very interesting, right? You can participate in carrying something much heavier if all you have to do is sort of step up and help carry it along with others, right? But if they're just loading you up and then you have to pick yourself up and carry it, you're able to carry much less. From here, you can calculate the size of the cluster of grapes that the spies carried together from the land of Israel, right? When now going back 38 years earlier, when Moses had sent 12 spies, one representative from each tribe, to check out the land of Israel, and that's when they brought back that report, right? 10 of the 12 spies brought back an evil report, meaning the land is beautiful, but there's giants there, and they'll eat us up the way they eat up other, smaller beings, and we don't have a chance. And then the people freaked out, and this is what angered God so much. Who were the 2 spies that did not freak out, who maintained emunah, who maintained their faith in God, and the reason for which they had come out of Egypt and now going to enter the promised land? Who were those 2 faithful spies? Caleb and Joshua, right? Joshua would become the leader of the Jewish people when Moses retired. So from here you calculate the size of the cluster of grapes that the spies carried out of the land of Israel, as it is stated, Numbers 13:23, and they carried it, the cluster of grapes, upon a pole between 2. And that's what you very often see as a symbol of Israel. This image, right, of 2 men carrying a pole, and between them a massive cluster of grapes, right, showing how mighty and fertile is the land, like these giant size, monster size grapes where a cluster of them needs 2 people to carry it on a pole. But if you think that's big, you ain't heard nothing yet. Now, from the fact that it is stated that they carried the cluster of grapes on a pole, do I not know that it was carried by 2 people? That is the only way it can be carried on a pole. So what is the meaning when the verse states between 2? It means that the spies carried it on 2 poles, and 4 people carried the cluster of grapes together. And from here it can be deduced that the weight of the cluster was 480 sah, a truly massive cluster of grapes. Rabbi Yitzchak said, no, you're completely underestimating the miracle of this. They were configured like upper rods of scales, turtane, that are balanced on the lower rods of scales, i.e. there were not 2, but rather 4 poles. How so? 8 of the spies carried the cluster of grapes, 1 of them carried a pomegranate, and 1 carried a fig. Joshua and Caleb did not carry anything. Why did Joshua and Caleb not carry anything? If you wish, say it is because they were prominent, more prominent than the others, and it was beneath their dignity to carry such a load. And if you wish, say that instead that they did not take part in the wicked counsel of the spies, and the cluster of grapes was brought by the spies to scare the people. So this idea of how we learn out how big this cluster was and that 8 people might be carrying it, there's a couple of illustrations here. Maybe you can see that. Right, so you've got 4 on each side and the 4 poles making a kind of a basket area to carry the grapes. 4 on each side, or maybe 2 in each corner, 8 that way, or 2 in each corner with crossed poles. At any rate, there's various traditions about it, but they were big grapes, big grapes. Now, Rabbi Ami and Rabbi Yitzchak Napacha disagree with regard to the dispute between the Tanaim as to the height of the water when the Jewish people crossed the Jordan River. One says, according to the statement of Rabbi Yehuda, that the water stood at a height of 12 mil. Now we're in 34b. And the Jewish people crossed in the same formation as they camped. So it was necessary for the water to stand only 12 mil high to allow the entire encampment to pass through the Jordan, perhaps 12 mil wide. And the water had to reach these heights to allow for enough time for everyone to cross the Jordan as they crossed one after the other. And another says, according to both this sage and that sage, they crossed in the same formation as they camped. However, one sage, Rabbi Yehuda, holds that a person moves faster than water, and the other sage, Rabbi Lazar, the son of Rabbi Shimon, holds that water moves faster than a person does. Since the Gemara mentioned the cluster of grapes that the spies brought back from the land of Israel, it continues discussing the story of the spies. It is stated in the Torah that God told Moses, "Send you men." Right? Now remember, this was not God's idea. Right? The people said, "Shall we send spies?" And Moses asked God, "Shall I send spies?" And God said, "If it seems good in your eyes, send the spies." God knew that it was not going to go well. But, God doesn't live our lives for us. We have free will. He enables us to, establish and cultivate leadership in our lives. And we're going to make our own mistakes. And here they made a big mistake, right? So it is stated in the Torah, Numbers 13:2, that God said to Moses, "Send you men." And Reish Lakish says this phrase, "send you," means that you should send them at your own discretion. It is not a divine command. You want to send? Send. It's not a mitzvah. I'm not telling you to send. You want to send? Send. As if it were a divine command, does a person choose a bad portion for himself? Since God knew the nature of these spies and that they would ultimately slander the land, he certainly would not have sent them himself. And this is the meaning of that which is written in the passage where Moses retold the story of the spies toward the end of his life in the book of Deuteronomy, Devarim. And it was good in my eyes, says Moses at Deuteronomy 1:23. And it was good in my eyes, says Moses. And Reish Lakish explains the implication of these words is that it seemed good in my eyes, Moses, in my eyes, but not in the eyes of the omnipresent. And the Torah relates that the people asked Moses to send spies so that they may search the land for us. Deuteronomy 1:22. And Rabbi Chia bar Abba says, when the Jewish people asked to send spies, their intention was only to shame Eretz Yisrael. And it is written here that they may search Veyachperu, the land for us. And it is written there that the moon will be embarrassed, Vechafara, and the sun will be ashamed. Isaiah 24:23. Now, what's wrong with these people? What was wrong with us, right? This is us. This is our ancestors, and in some senses, we were there. Our souls were there. We're living another lifetime now, but we were there. What was wrong with us? That having witnessed everything that God did for us, redeeming us from slavery, feeding us manna, giving us the 10 Commandments, etc., why would we doubt God's word? That he's going to give us a beautiful promised land, that, there's an end point to this journey, that we're not just coming out of Egypt to go die in the desert. Why would anybody doubt that, having experienced these miracles and the constant miracle of God's presence? You want to know where God is? Right there. Pillar of cloud, pillar of fire. That's not all of God, but that's, God letting us know he's right here with us, paying attention to us, paving the way for us. Why would such an intelligent, gifted nation as the children of Israel have any doubt about that? One answer, we're stubborn, stiff-necked people who couldn't get past, our own skepticism and doubts, etc. But there is another view. It's a nicer view, let's say, that, when we were traipsing around the wilderness with this encampment and the manna in the morning and Miriam's well providing water and a lovely array of all the people, everyone living in tents, that very similar to each other, it was paradise. It was an absolute paradise, idyllic existence. We didn't have to worry about anything. Nobody had to work. Nobody had to do anything. What were we doing all day long? Learning Torah from Moses, who was learning it directly from God. I mean, the spiritual loftiness of such an existence was so awesome that they didn't want to leave. They weren't disparaging the land because they had doubt that God could bring us in there. They were trying to say, can we just stay here? It's so good here. We love it. We love being with you, God. We love learning from you. We love learning from your prophet Moses. It's great right here. Do we really have to rock the boat and end this? You can't stay a child forever. You can't stay a college student forever. Whatever's a wonderful, amazing moment in life, this too shall pass, right? We have to, for everything that's great, this too shall pass. And it's good to remember that when we're enduring something terrible, terrible hardship, that too shall pass. Things come to an end. And that had come to an end. Now, the Torah states with regard to the spies, and these were their names: of the tribe of Reuben, Shemua, the son of Zakkur. Numbers 13:4. Now, Rabbi Yitzhak says this statement that follows is a tradition of ours that was passed down to us from our ancestors. The spies were named after their actions, but we have obtained the interpretation of only one name, the name of Sethur, the son of Michael. He is called Sethur as he hid, Satar, same root as the name Esther, hidden, the actions of the Holy One, blessed be he. In other words, one of the spies ignored the miracles that God had performed for the Jewish people in Egypt and in the wilderness, and he is called Michael. Now, Michael, now in English you would say Michael. I mean, that's the name of the archangel, right? Like the highest angel, God's, right-hand assistant. I mean, the angels don't compare in any way to God, but still, of the angels, the highest angel is Michael, right? The one whose name is God. He's not God, but he's an expression of God. Very high and lofty angel. Now, why would we say that the name Michael is somehow a negative, slandering of God and God's ways? What? Well, he is called Michael as he made him, meaning God, appear weak, right? Not Michael, whose name is God, but Mach, weak, by saying that there was not enough food in the land for everyone. So a very different interpretation of what that name could mean. And Rabbi Yochanan says, we can also say an interpretation of the name Nabi, the son of Vapsi, Numbers 13:14, one of the other spies, that he is called Nabi as he concealed, Hechbi, the name of the Holy One, blessed be he, that the land is good, by delivering a distorted description of it. And he is called Vapsi as he stomped, Piseh, on the attributes of the Holy One, blessed be he, i.e. he did not believe in his promise to give the land of Israel to the Jewish people. And it is also stated with regard to the spies, and they went up into the south, and he came to Hebron. Now, why is the phrase, and he came, written in the singular form? You would think that it would say, and they went up into the south, and they came to Hebron. But it's, they went up into the south, and he came to Hebron. And this is the source of a very beautiful teaching, which you're going to hear about here. A very famous Talmudic teaching. Why is the phrase, and he came, written in the singular form? The verse should have said, and they came. And Rava says this teaches that Caleb separated himself from the council of the other spies, and he went and prostrated himself on the graves of the forefathers in Hebron, right? The cave of Machpelah, where Adam and Eve, and Abraham and Sarah, and Isaac and Rebekah, and Jacob and Leah are all buried. And so Caleb went to pray by the cave, the burial place of the patriarchs and the matriarchs, and he realized that he would need their strength and their merit to support him in standing strong against the council of the other spies. And by the way, it's quite an experience. You can go to Hebron today when you travel to Israel. It's not always so easy. It's in a part of the country where there's a lot of danger and trouble. But you can go there, and we did, and it's a very moving experience to be at the burial place of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, and Leah. Rachel is not buried there because she was buried on the road near Ephrat. But you can also visit Rachel's tomb. At any rate, the Gemara explains, Joshua, right, Caleb went there. But Joshua did not. Why? Joshua did not go to the graves of the forefathers because Moses had already prayed for mercy for him. As it is stated, and Moses called Hoshea, the son of Nun, Joshua, Yehoshua, meaning God will save you, Yah Yoshiaka, from the council of the spies. And this is the meaning of that which is written, but my servant Caleb, because he had another spirit with him, and has followed me fully, him will I bring into the land whereinto he went. Numbers 14:24, which implies that Caleb changed his mind over time. Joshua, however, was opposed to the intentions of the other spies from the outset. Caleb was going along with the other spies until he realized that where they were headed, and then he parted ways with them. Joshua always distrusted these other spies. And the verse continues to state about Hebron, and Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the children of Anak, were there. Ahiman was called by this name because he was the most skilled, Meyuman, among his brothers. Sheshai was called by his name because he would turn the land that he treaded upon into ditches, Shechatot, due to his large dimensions. And Talmai was called this because he would turn the land that he treaded upon into furrows upon furrows, Telamim, due to his weight. Alternatively, their names signify another matter. Ahiman is the one who built the city of Anat. Sheshai built the city of Alush. Talmai built the city of Talbush. And the verse describes them as the children of Anak because they were so tall and large that it appeared as if they were wearing Me'anakin, the sun, as a necklace due to their height. Now the continuation of the verse states, now Hebron was built 7 years, Shanim, years, before Zoan of Egypt, Mitzrayim. Now the Gemara, this is Numbers 13:22, and the Gemara asks, what is the meaning of the phrase "was built"? If we say that it was actually built 7 years before Zoan, would a person build a house for his younger son before he builds one for his older son? Canaan, we speak of the land of Canaan, but it's named after a person, the original son of the sons of of Ham or of Noah. Of Noah, right? These are the immediate descendants of Noah, right? When he came out of the ark, right? So Canaan was the youngest son of Ham, as it is written, and the sons of Ham, Cush and Mitzrayim and Put and Canaan, right? So Ham was one of the sons of Noah, and Canaan was a son of Ham, along with Cush, Mitzrayim, which became Egypt, and Put and Canaan. How then could Hebron, a city in the land of Canaan, have been built before Zoan, a city in the land of Egypt, which was occupied by the descendants of Mitzrayim, that became Egypt? Rather, the meaning of the verse that Hebron was 7 times more, rather the meaning is not that Hebron was settled 7 years before Zoan, but rather that Hebron was 7 times more fruitful, mevuna, than Zoan. And there is no stonier land in the land of Israel than Hebron. And this is evident because they would bury the dead there, right? That's why the cave of Machpelah is there. It's not a land suitable for farming. It's a place to put graves, especially in caves, right? So just as the forefathers were buried there. So this was done only in the land that was not suitable for agriculture. And of all the lands, there is none of a higher quality than the land of Egypt, right? The Nile River bringing all that silt down river creates a land that is incredibly fertile for growing crops. And there's no higher quality land in the land of Egypt than Zoan. And as it is written with regard to Pharaoh's ministers, who would certainly have lived on the finest land in the country, for his princes are in Zoan, Isaiah 30, verse 4. And even so, now we're being told that Hebron was 7 times more fruitful than Zoan. I'm almost done. If you have questions or comments, get them in now. So the Gemara asks, but is the land of Hebron in fact stony? But isn't it written, and it came to pass at the end of 40 years that Absalom said to the king, right? Absalom, the son of David, I pray, let me go and pay my vow, which I vowed to the Lord in Hebron. This is before the temple was built. 2 Samuel 15:7. And Rav Avia says, and some say that it was Rabba bar Chanan, this means that Absalom went to bring sheep specifically from Hebron. And it is taught in a baraisa, one must bring the choicest animals to the temple as offerings. What are you going to give to God? You give him your best. So one must bring the choicest animals to the temple as offerings. And rams are brought from Moab, right? Like Ruth was a Moabitess from Moab. And sheep are brought from Hebron. And this indicates that Hebron has rich land where fat and healthy sheep are raised. And the Gemara answers, no, from this very source it can be proven that Hebron is not suitable for agriculture. Since the earth there is thin, it produces only grass for grazing and fattens the livestock, but it's not a place where you're going to plant vineyards and grow grain, etc. That's where we'll finish today. Tomorrow night, God willing, after Shabbat ends, we'll continue with page 35. It's getting later and later, so I do my best to get on the air as quickly as possible after Shabbat ends, but probably about 9 p.m. Pacific tomorrow night. All right, let's check comments or questions on Sotah, page 34. Nina's reporting no tech problems, thank God. And Tom Beck, what's the opposite of Dayenu? People freaking out after the Spies, right? We sing Dayenu at Passover when we read the Haggadah. It would have been enough for us. You kept giving us more and more gifts. You brought us out of slavery. You fed us in the desert. You brought us to Mount Sinai. You gave us the Torah. You gave us a promised land. At every step of the way, it would have been enough. But you kept giving us more. What's the opposite, says Tom? It's the Spies saying it's never enough. It's never enough, right? Very good. Okay, I think that's all the questions and comments. Great to be learning with you on a Friday, and looking forward to learning with you tomorrow night. All the best.